My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With AllTrails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with AllTrails.
Guys, welcome to this special edition of a classic episode from way back in the archives of Heavy Metal Tones, when the days when I thought I knew what I was doing and I didn't really. No, I'm only joking. They're really just fond memories. Now, the reason I'm doing this, sadly, is that I had to travel back to the UK as I lost my father just recently, and I hadn't got time to record backup episodes or episodes I had in the pipeline to do. So I thought I would give you a couple of classic episodes. This first one is one of my favorite history-related episodes. It is Iron Maiden year after all, so I thought, why not get this one again? I had a lot of good feedback from this. I really enjoyed digging into it. It was in my old mic setup, my old recording studio setup, with my old mic, in fact. So hey, it might sound a little bit clumsy. What do you mean might sound a bit clumsy? Because it sounds clumsy all the time. I know that, Tony, I know. Anyway, do enjoy this episode, and I hope to get back to you I should be back on and recording with all good intentions in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Talk to you soon. Bye for now. Hi guys, welcome to Heavy Metal Tones. This week's episode is quite an interesting one. If you hear my voice being a bit odd and funny, I am recovering from the COVID. I caught it at work, I think. I'm in lockdown for another 4 days or so. My wife has now caught it as well. It's really horrible. I'm going to say this out now. I know there might be some people out there listening thinking it's just a cold. I know I'm an old man, and so my system is weaker. And I got my booster back in September last year, so I think that doesn't help. It's really horrible. The headaches were chronic. I mean, really, really chronic. And I'm a migraine sufferer, so I know what headaches are about. Anyway, so if you hear me sniffling and don't sound myself, I've got a sexy, gravelly voice, it's because I've had the COVID. Now, this week's episode is interesting. So 2 parts. In part 1, a little history lesson. In part 2, a music appreciation lesson. So, if any of you are aware of the fantastic Iron Maiden album that came out a few years ago, Book of Souls, that it had a ending epic, probably one of, if not, I would say, the greatest Maiden epic of the modern era. And I would say modern era, I'm talking about post-2000, in Empire of the Clouds. I desperately want that on the picture disc 10-inch that came out on Music Record Store Day. I missed out. Someone nabbed the only copy in front of me, so I didn't get it. Anyone out there... Oh, scratch the beard, isn't it? ASMR. Anyone out there who has a copy and wants to give it away, wants to sell it to me, you know where to contact me. heavymetaltones@gmail.com. That's heavymetaltones@gmail.com. Anyway, so... Empire of the Clouds. If you're not sure or don't know what it's about the airship race of 1929. So in 1929, picture it. It's not the birth of aviation, no, by no means, but it's the infancy of aviation. And the British Empire, the British government, the Air Ministry, wanted to build a form of transport that could take its civil servants and public servants and its its swanky upper class elite all the way to the four corners of the empire, mainly India, where at that time was the largest part of the British Empire, to Karachi. And they wanted to do it as quickly as possible. Now, you could do it via boat, you could do it via plane, but you had to do it over many drops and hops. Whereas this one would, in one refueling, land in Egypt, and from there on then to Karachi. So they set about having a competition, a civil one and a government one. So it was meant to be fair. I don't think it was fair, to be fair, obviously, to be fair. So the Air Ministry made their version, the R101, and a private company, Vickers, up in the north, who also made Spitfires and so on. Now, I think they made Spitfires. I think I'm wrong, sorry. That's Supermarine, isn't it? Anyway, because they still made aircraft and fighting craft and guns and so on. They're up in the north in their drafty hangar, where by all accounts it was constantly wet, it leaked, it was freezing cold, people got sick trying to make these things. They were, and of course, they're in the class of dirigibles. Dirigible is a hard-skinned, large air-filled balloon with a cabins or something attached underneath to carry the engines and the pilots and so on and people. Now, up to this point, they've been relatively large, but nothing the size of this. So the R101 itself was 731 feet long, or 223 meters in length. It was only beaten in length by the L7129 Hindenburg in 1936. That's 7 years later. They say that you'll find out in the lyrics of the song if you listen to the song after this, but it was bigger than the Titanic. Now, obviously, we live in a time when we don't really know in our mind how big the Titanic is, and to be honest, there are ocean-going liners now that are bigger than the Titanic, but back then it was a very large vessel. So you can imagine it. It stored 5.5 million square feet of hydrogen in its balloons, in its major balloon. The balloons themselves were made out of so inside the shell you have these air sacs, which were made of cow gut, and took an estimate of 7,000 cows to make the air bladders for the hydrogen, and they glued them together, these sacks, and unfortunately they were often attacked by rats, because the rats would go in to eat the animal carcass, which is the skin, the bladders. It was by all means a very hard process to make this, over many months of planning and building. In fact, interesting side note, I can't remember which one, whether it was R100 or R101, but Barnes Wallis was involved in the design, and he, of course, built the bouncing bomb, blew the Ruhr Dam, or the dams. Another really interesting story, and we'll cover that in a few weeks' time when Benji and I do the war podcast, history with music and war around Sabaton and their love of history and music. particularly Second World War or war and music. And one of those will be about the bouncing bomb. So it was commissioned by the Admiralty, the Air Arm, and built in the R101 was built just outside London, in North London, in Carnington near Bedfordshire, not far from where I grew up actually. In fact, they actually did display the airship at the Hendon Airfield, and I grew up in Hendon. Anyone listening in London who know where Hendon is, it's near the police college. I don't think the college is there anymore, sadly, but that's where I grew up. I spent many a year wandering around the Hendon Aerodrome War Museum, looking at the planes and particularly the Lancaster they've got there. They've also got Churchill's last cigar there, I believe, as well. Anyway, it was an interesting build design because it was hampered from the beginning. The little metric to get a balloon to lift as high as that needed, with that kind of weight, to go that kind of distance, and to carry those kind of engines, and they were huge diesel engines, and it had underneath it had a ballroom that was 5,500 square feet. And I'm sorry, it was 5,509,750 cubic feet of hydrogen. I wrote that down and I missed that. It even had a smoking room. I mean, can you believe the hubris of people? A smoking room under a balloon full of the most flammable material on the planet. At 5,509,755 cubic feet of it. It was asbestos lined, I suppose, so they did some kind of thing. But to get that lift, as I was saying, with this kind of size, it was basically a 2-story hotel underneath this balloon. And to get out of Karachi and to come back, you had to lift the nose up. It needed 11 million tons of lift. So 11 tons of lift, sorry, to get the nose up. So this they found out later in its design, and to do that they had to tack on an extra 43 feet of the nose, add extra airbags in to get the lift. This, I think, was one of its downfalls, and of course the longer it took, and the materials it was made of were starting to rot, and because there was leaks in the sheds. I mean, this is 1929, so into 1930, and so these aren't airtight space station building places. These are just big sheds that they had actually recommissioned from previous air balloon dirigibles to make it bigger, and so it started to rot. Now, there was an apocryphal story, where they came to give it its airworthy certificate, and the captain, sadly, he took the guy doing the check into a room, and he gave him a little bit of fabric, and he said, "Fill this," and it was the silver fabric that's wrapped over the steel frame, because it's actually the R101 had a steel skin. Oh, keep knocking the mic. A steel skin, but on top of that steel skin, it also had this sort of fabric coating and a metal, and that was wearing away like it didn't have a steel skin, so it had a steel frame, and it was wrapped in this fabric that was painted like with a metal coating, and that metal coating was wearing away and flaking off. And the captain showed the adjudicator this, and dutifully he refused to give it airworthiness certificate. But because it was the government were doing the certificates, the government turned a blind eye. Which we'll find out was later on much, unfortunately, a terrible thing to do. Yes. So you can see right from the outset, they just wanted to win this race. They wanted to be the kings of the air. I mean, you have to remember that at that time, the British Empire was the largest empire on the face of the earth. 3/4 of the globe was British. And the hubris of Britain, and the hubris of a Victorian hangover from the Victorian era. You can just imagine these, admirals of the air ministry, their big moustaches and their jodhpurs and their, sitting in their boys' clubs, making these ghastly predictions that, we will run the world and be on the moon, and, we have the largest navy and the largest army, and we control trade routes, and you can just see it. And honestly, even though I'm British, I'm not proud of that aspect of it. I'm proud that we could rule the seas, but I'm not proud that these sort of things. I mean, it comes hand in hand with slavery and the treading on those below you. But again, that's a different podcast, right? Anyway, yes. So, interestingly, here's a really interesting fact. They started filling the balloons with the hydrogen on the 11th of July 1929, and they didn't finish filling them until the 21st of September that year. So that's a long time to fill these balloons with hydrogen, which would have been a dangerous aspect of that alone, because it was highly flammable. I would imagine that once it was filled, that's it. You just then kept them sealed, filled up with occasional leakage, and just used the diesel engines to fly the machine. On the 2nd of October, there was a press conference. They were going to take out press and 101 government officials, parliamentary officials, but they couldn't get out of the shed because of the weather. They couldn't get the lift out of it, so they didn't do it. Thank goodness they didn't do that, because, as we'll find out, it doesn't end well. By the end of November, though, more than 1 million people had come to see this miracle of marvel of engineering. These are the same people that built the Alexandra Palace and the Forth Bridge and so on. By the way, at the same time, up in the north, the 100 is being worked on quietly by industrious northerners, quietly to themselves. Yes, and then on the 14th of October, it took a short circuit out where it passed over Westminster, the Palace of Westminster and St. Paul's Cathedral for a 40-minute trip. As I said, it was past fit to fly. I mean, I'm not going to go into all of the details. I mean, this is a very, very detailed. You can find. I'll put the link in to at the bottom of the Wikipedia page, so you can get more if you're really interested. Go and have another deep dive, because there's some really fascinating things about what they didn't check or what they did check. I mean, they tried to save weight as much as they could for their maiden voyage over to India, but the crew couldn't take suitcases on. They could only take their luggage in paper bags, one change of clothing. Quite a sad note is that the captain, he said to his oldest son, and it's on record that he said this, is that please look after your mum and brothers. I won't be back from this. And that's because he knew. I mean, he knew. He'd flown many dirigibles. He knew that they were cutting corners, and they were all for the race to win. And again, this is the hubris. Had you not made this a race, had you just said, as a governmental thing, we're going to just make this thing, I reckon you would have saved the lives that were lost on that maiden voyage to India. Because you wouldn't try and win. You wouldn't want to be that old boys club, like I said, the whole Phileas Fogg thing, the cigars and whiskey and brandy, and we're the best and we're going to win, and I make a wager. And all you're doing is wagering against people's lives, which clearly they did, and their own, because those same ministers took that fateful flight. Okay, I'm just going to go get a cup of tea in a second. I just need to go dry throat because of the, because of this COVID, and we'll talk about that fateful flight next. Okay, talk to you soon, guys. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for that. I just needed a little drink. So the final departure. Now I'm going to read to you. This is from Wikipedia because I don't want to get this wrong. So it is word from Wikipedia. Please, I do my research. Just that because of COVID and stuff, I've been a bit. But I want to read this because I don't want anyone to miss out on this information. I'll cherry pick it, but I also don't want to get anything wrong. So the R101 departed from Cardington on the evening of the 4th of October 1930 for its intended destination of Karachi via a fueling stop at Ismailia in Egypt, under the command of Flight Lieutenant Carmichael Irwin. He's the one that said to his son, "I won't come back." On that ship, we also had Lord Thomas, Secretary of the Estate of Air. He was the guy that put the race together. Sir Sefton Branca, Director of Civil Aviation. Squadron Leader William Palstra, RAF Air Liaison Officer to the British Air Ministry. Director of Airship Development Reginald Colmore, and both Lieutenant Colonel V.C. Richmond and Michael Rope. The weather forecast of the morning of the 4th of October was generally favourable, predicting south to southwesterly winds of between 20 and 30 miles per hour. At 2,000 feet over the north of France, the conditions improving over southern France and the Mediterranean Sea, although the midday forecast indicated that some deterioration in the situation was not considered to be alarming, even though enough to cancel the planned voyage. Of course, a course was planned with which the R101 over London, Paris and Toulouse, crossing the French coast near Narbonne. Fine rain was beginning to fall when at dusk, with all the crew and passengers aboard R101 ready for departure, under the illuminating spotlights, jettisoning of water ballasts to bring the airship into trim was clearly visible. Squadron Leader Booth, the commander of R100, was watching the departure from the tower's observation gallery, and an estimated 2 tons had been discharged from the nose and a further ton from the midships ranks. I mean, you can't think. I mean, these numbers are unfathomable. That's just water. Anyway, that's ballast, basically. You want to know what ballast is? It's just keeps things down and stable. Trains use it all the time. Okay. I'll just skip through a little bit here about just travelling through the air. Okay. At 1919, having flown 29 miles or 47 kilometres, but still only 8 miles or 13 kilometres from Cardington, a course was set for London. And at 2001, the R101, by now over Potter's Bar, friends who lived in Potter's Bar, made its second report to Cardington, confirming the intention to proceed via London, Paris and Narbonne, but making no mention of the engine problem. So I missed that, but there was an engine problem going on earlier on. Sorry, I must have skimmed past that. I can't imagine it would just be to do something with the diesel engine. Apologise again. Go and have a look into this. Making no mention of the problem. By this point, the weather had deteriorated and it was raining heavily. Flying around 800 feet or 240 metres above the ground, the airship passed over Alexandra Palace before changing course slightly to the landmark clock tower of the Metropolitan Cattle Market north of Islington, which is sadly not there anymore, I believe, and thence over Shoreditch to cross the Thames in the vicinity of the Isle of Dogs, passing over the Royal Naval College at Greenwich. An update of the meteorological situation was received at 2040. The forecast had deteriorated severely. Southwesterly winds of up to 50 miles per hour, with low cloud and rain being predicted for northern France and similar conditions over central France. This was caused concern on board. This caused concern on board is demonstrated by the request for more detailed information, which was transmitted at 21:19, by which time the R101 was near Hawkhurst, Kent. It's possible the alternative course was being considered across the English coast near Hastings, and at 21:40 a transmitted progress report back to Cardington, mentioning that the recovery of rainwater into the ballast tanks was taking place, but again not reporting the engine problem. Getting more water to the ballast tanks from the rain. Okay. By now, the wind risen to about 44 miles per hour, or 71 kilometres, with strong gusts, but a further meteorological report received shortly afterwards. The airship was across the coast and be encouraging about weather conditions south of Paris. The French coast was crossed at the point de Sequinin, and I'm sorry if French listeners, if I said that wrong. I don't mean to be disrespectful. My French is very bad. I did 3 years of French, and I can say oui oui, camembert. Anyway, that's very offensive, and I've probably lost all my French listeners. But anyway, I didn't mean that. I'm not well. Sorry, guys. At the east of, pardon me, a new course was set to bring the R101 over Ulan, based on an estimated wind direction of 245 degrees and speed of 35 miles an hour, or 56 kilometers. The intended course would have taken the R101 4 miles west of Beauvoir, but the estimated wind speed and direction were inaccurate, and the result of which R101's track was to the east of the intended course. The error would have become apparent when about 1 o'clock in the morning R101 passed over Poix de Picardie, a distinctive hilltop town that could have been readily distinguishable to Navigation Officer Squadron Leader E.L. Johnson. At 2 o'clock, the watch was changed. Second Officer Maurice Steff, taking over the command from Irwin, was at this point flying heavily, relying on the dynamic lift generated by forward airspeed to maintain altitude estimated by the Board of Inquiry at least 1,000 feet or 300 metres above the ground. And at about 2:07, the R101 went into a dive from which it slowly recovered, probably losing around 450 feet. As it did so, Rigger S. Church, who was returning to the crew quarters to come off duty, was sent forward to realise the forward engine ballast bags, which were locally controlled. So it was sent forward to release the forward engine ballast bags, which were locally controlled. This first dive was steep enough to cause A.H. Leach, the foreman engineer from Cardington, to be thrown from his seat in his smoking room. What's this smoking room there? What's it say to you, really? So, to be thrown from his to wake Chief Electrician Arthur Disley from his dozing in the switch room next to the chart cabin. As the airship recovered, Disley was aroused by Chief Coxswain G.W.H. Hunt, who then went to the crew quarters calling out, "We're down, lads," in a warning. As this happened, the airship went into a second dive, and orders to reduce speed to 450 miles per hour were received in the engine cars. Before engineer A.J. Cook, on duty in the left-hand midships engine car, could respond, the airship hit the ground at the edge of the wood outside Allon. A-L-L-O-N-E, sorry guys, 2.15 miles or 4 kilometres southwest of Beauvoir, and immediately caught fire. The reason for the order to reduce speed is a matter of conjecture, because this would have caused the airship to lose dynamic lift, adopt a nose downward altitude. The subsequent inquiry estimated the impactor speed was 13 miles an hour. Now, I can run faster than that. Well, I have in the past. It's about 4 kilometres or so for an hour. It's not very fast. But if you imagine a ship of that size with 5.7 million tonnes, cubic feet of a highly explosive, highly flammable hydrogen above you, it doesn't take a lot to your imagination to see that 13 miles an hour is still deadly. With the airship between 15 and 25 degrees at nose down, so it's pretty steep. 46 of the 54 passengers and crew were killed immediately. I'm just going to take a moment there. I feel really sad about that. Sorry, guys. Might be the COVID, I don't know. It's just brought a bit of a tear to my eye. Yeah. Anyway, Church and rigger W.G. Radcliffe survived the crash but later died in hospital in Beauvoir, bringing the total dead to 48. Now, there was inquiries, of course. Why did they slow the speed down? Why weren't they checked? Why was the route not changed? What was going on with the engines? This is, to me, this is a classic example, guys, of, I've said it before, again, the hubris of man, the ability to think that they can fight nature, better nature. Of course, now we sit back with our smartphones that have more power than we put a man on the moon, and in our 3-story behemoths that fly through the sky. But we've had almost 100 years of technical advancement in that time. This is the early days of flight, and it's it's the want for man to make the world as small as it can fit in the palm of his hand, as my dad would often say. To shrink the world and control it. It's like me. I equate sounds a silly thing here, an old person thing, but gardening. Like, I love really straight lines in gardening. I like Japanese horticulture, and I like square privets. I like to control nature when I'm in my garden, whereas my wife likes it wild and free, right? And to be part of nature and to just run with it. Now, that's exactly what this is about. It's about controlling, isn't it? But at that same time, if I trim a hedge into a square box, I don't kill anyone. But if I take 48 people up into, let's be honest, an extremely dangerous situation that most people knew we weren't going to come back from, and try, without even the ability to save them. I mean, there was no way they could save it. I mean, even if they did, there was no parachutes, by the way, too much weight. And even if they did jump out at that speed, you're going to die hitting the ground, that height, and you probably wouldn't get away from the fireball when it hit. The R100 went on to fly to America, and it would have kept flying, but because of the R101 and its tragedy, they grounded all of it. You can understand, they grounded it to the loss of the equivalent of multiple millions, probably even hundreds of millions of pounds of work and man hours. And it would have worked, because I think the R100 was not trying to be brash and bold, and it was thought about and checked and thoroughly looked at, whereas the 101 wanted to just be the king of the skies. Anyway, so guys, let's take a second just to think about these people, because they are forgotten, and you wouldn't have thought about this unless you're into this sort of thing. Why would you think about those 48 people? Let's be honest, apart from the memorial that's near Beauvoir in France, I don't know if I've spelled that wrong or even I've said it correctly, they're forgotten, aren't they? Even by their families. And this is almost 100 years ago, 98 years ago. So would it not be thought that even their families would forget? There's probably people listening to this podcast who are related to one of those 48 people who had no idea that they took part in one of the greatest air disasters of all time. And it's not, more people have died, don't get me wrong. I mean, of course, more people have died in things like 9/11 and in major aircraft crashes, with hundreds of people. But the reason that this one, I think, for me, is one of the greatest is because it was one of the most. It was foreseen. People, it was foreseen. Okay, there were reasons not to fly. Whereas 9/11, that was just man's ability to be monstrous. Whereas other aircraft crashes are small accidents that happen that are overseen. Whereas this was we turned a blind eye. They turned a blind eye in the race to be king of the air and to win that whatever money was up for that. And I didn't know if there was a wager bet, but I think there was. Sorry, again, I'm not feeling well, so I haven't done that bit of research. I've been digging deep into it. But yeah, it's a very sad crash, very sad story. But what we're going to do, sorry, that's taking up the whole episode. Normally I try and get all things in half an hour, 40 minutes. This is going to be a much longer episode, guys. I hope you do enjoy it. I've really enjoyed the time off that I could do this research, and yes, I stole a bit from Wikipedia, but that was only because I don't want to do just those 48 people and say something wrong and get it, I mean, I may have misquoted here and there before, but this is where I want to be correct. So I'm going to go and put the kettle on, gargle some salt water, maybe a bit of lemon in my tea, take some Panadol, and I will be back with my take on Iron Maiden's thoughts and musical musings on the R101. It's 18-minute long epic, penned mainly by Bruce Dickinson. Yes, it's everything that we've always wanted in a Maiden song and more. It's more than 12 minutes. It's beautifully progressive, and it's Iron Maiden. Anyway, I don't want to go into that till the second half. So I will see you after the break, guys. Welcome back, guys. And now this our second part of the program is now around basically around the song, as we said at the beginning of the show, "Empire of the Clouds" from the 2016 album by Iron Maiden, Book of Souls. This was now their longest song outside of Power Slave's Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and it was originally written by Bruce Dickinson. The music itself, or the idea, was originally about the First World War fighter pilots, but because he'd already written another song on the same album called Death or Glory, if we did change it. The reason he changed it, he was reading a book, a sort of big encyclopedic tome on the crash report for the R101, and thought, well, it's a very poignant story, and the book's called Ride the Storm as well, so that you can get Empire of the Clouds from there. He sort of he composed it mainly on his on tour, as they always do, and he recorded it at Guillermo Tell Studios in Paris. It was produced by Kevin Shirley, the great South African heavy metal producer and heavy rock producer Kevin Shirley. And the intro, which is very interesting, was one of the only Iron Maiden songs that it does intro with a piano, is played on a Steinway by Bruce Dickinson himself. He writes the piano intro to that one. According to Adrian Smith, Dickinson was working on it for about a month on his own in a soundproof booth, just get the piano piece right. I mean, Dickinson can play a bit of guitar. He can play a bit of piano now, obviously, but he's naturally not a physical musician. He's a wonderful vocalist and a singer, but not with an instrument as such. And that's always, he probably wanted to do his best, not embarrass himself in front of the best, one of the greatest bands in the world. And the fans are very, very, very funny about that kind of thing. All right. It was a challenge, according to Adrian, because there was so many pieces to the song. It's 18 minutes long. The piano track, it's just produced by Kevin. Nico experimented with a variety of percussive instruments, including a bowed gong to recreate the airship's crash. See, I'll stop there for a second. This is what's wonderful about... I'm going to sneeze there. It's what's wonderful about Maiden and their wholehearted love and unashamed adoration for progressive rock music. You know on this podcast by now how much I love progressive rock music, and just the fact that they could go out there. And I know that when you've got over, you're selling 150 million copies of records, and you've been going for 40 years. You have the right to do what you want musically. But it doesn't mean that you will always do it, because there's a bit of you in your mind, a little bit of your accountant in your mind goes, is that wise, Bruce? Will it sell many records? Because at the end of the day, they are businessmen as well. But I think because they have the freedom to be musically unabashed, is the right word, I think they can do what they want. And 18 minutes for any musical rock band, even the big prog bands of the 70s like Yes and ELP and Van der Graaf Generator and Crimson and Floyd, and I might put Floyd in the progressive area there. I know that people know I don't think they're really progressive, but I put it in there anyway. It's difficult to write pieces of music fluently and narratively to be able to play live. Now I know a lot of these bands never played a lot of their stuff live, but Maiden has a thing where it likes to play as much live pop music as it can, and so it was really a challenge for them. I think it was really a beautiful piece of music. On the 11th of March, the band announced that the song would be released as a 12-inch picture disc for Record Store Day. And yes, as I said before, I queued up, and yes, some pillock in front of me got one. Just like the year after when I wanted the Pistols pink vinyl. I mean, unfortunately, I won't be at Record Store Day this year because I'll be away on holiday. But if you do go to Record Store Day, I highly recommend you do. It's a bit of a free-for-all sometimes with these one-off pieces. Anyway, that is what it is. Now, look, it got critical acclaim. People thought it was a masterpiece. I personally think it's. People say it's as spellbinding as the 1984's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Stop, people, right there. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to ask you to put the pen down, or stop your phone, or listen to music. Right there, nothing is as spellbinding as Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Nothing. Sorry, Matt, my good friend Matt. Matty will tell you the same thing. There is only one Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Yes, Death of the Celts of the last album, and yes, Empire of the Clouds. Wonderful, beautiful, delicious, thick, unctuous, chewable music. Stuff you can get your teeth around, and your gums on, and your lips on, and then you can just be with it for 18 minutes. There is not many things in life that you can quite quietly be on your own for 18 minutes unfettered and get that much pleasure out. Now, for you dirty-minded people out there, of course there is other things, but about you, but 18 minutes, I would have no chance. Anyway, sorry, I'm not well, must be the medication. Look, as I said, it's spellbinding. Yeah, I think it's wonderful, but I've played Rime of the Ancient Mariner more times than I could possibly even remember. But I've played Empire of the Clouds maybe 30, 40 times in the 4 years that it's been, 5 years since it was released. Look, it does take you away on a lovely balance. It's got, like, I'm going to read you the lyrics, okay? And it's typically Bruce, because Bruce is a beautiful lyricist, okay? To ride the storm to an empire of the clouds, to ride the storm they climbed above their silver ghost, to ride the storm to a kingdom that will come, to ride the storm and damn the rest oblivion. It's beautiful. And the way he spits out, and damn the rest oblivion, it's just, well, I sounded like David Bowie then. And let me tell you a story. I almost went to David Bowie's wedding reception. I was in a hotel in New York, 1980 something. My girlfriend at the time, I got tickets to see, and I'm going to say this through gritted teeth, Beauty and the Beast. We'd just seen A Streetcar Named Desire with Alec Baldwin, and what's her name from Splash, Daryl Hannah, and then we went to go and see Beauty and the Beast. Now we're coming down to the reception at the St. Moritz on the Park, and this English guy in the lift says to me, "Hey, I'm going to say limeys." He probably didn't say limeys, but in my head I think he did. He's in a tux, and he's like, "Hey, you limeys, you want to go to an Englishman's wedding reception on the top floor? You might like some English, some of his own countrymen." And I went, "No, we're going to the theatre." And as we came out of the lift, in comes as I'm telling you now, he comes through the doors with Iman, and he walks up to that guy he was talking to, and he's something like David goes, Roger, see you at the party, whatever. No, David Bowie have an American accent, but I'm not doing David Bowie. See you at the party. Anyway, he off he went, and it was too late. I turned around to my then girlfriend, and I was like, what do we do now? She's like, we can't, it's too embarrassing, we've declined it. So off we went. Anyway, sidetrack. It's not as lyrically full for a 20, almost 18-minute song as you think it would be. There's lots of space for Dave and Adrian and Steve and Nico and Yannick to stretch their wings and stretch their legs and have a nice gallop. It does musically emote the feeling of being in the clouds. It does, especially the opening piano refrain. It does have that yearn of the 30s. It also has that bombast, as I said before in the first part, about the power of of man against nature, and the pompousness of government and the pompousness of empire. It really does make it, when it says Empire of the Clouds, it does really come across that way when you read the story of the R101 and the R100. In the gathering gloom, a storm rising in the west, the coxswain stared into the mist. We must go now. We must take our chance with fate. We must go now, for the politicians, he cannot be late. All right, so that sort of straining of, we've got to go. We can't wait. We can't wait for tests. We have to go now. We have to go now. She never flew at full speed. A trial never done. A fragile outer cover her Achilles would become. As we told you before, so the outer cover, because of the extensions, and then when it went to land, as it went to crash, it had nothing to protect itself because it was fragile. The gas bags hit pretty quickly, and a spark off the metal frame into the bags, and bang, off you go. Feeling the wind as it blows you, feeling the beams as they pass you along, watching the channel below you lower and lower into the night. I mean, and of course, what this song does sometimes, like a lot of the latter day Maiden lyrics with Bruce, he tends to outgun his vocals with the words he writes. You know what I mean? He's galloping too fast in his head with the writing, and I know he just come back from throat cancer, so I'm not going to put that out there and say that was a reason, but he has for some time had moments where he can't keep up with the speed that he used to sing at, but still wants to, and I think with Empire of the Clouds you get that sometimes in the middle eight of the song, but as I said, plenty of room, plenty of space to stretch out, plenty of atmosphere. So if you really are keen on a little bit of history in your music, happy to sit back and not want to just be 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and take yourself on a journey. I mean, I highly recommend good noise cancelling headphones on vinyl if you've got it. If not, on streaming or CD, quietly to yourself in a darkened place. It's not a song for taking you out on a running or be on the bus sometimes, or anywhere the distractions. It's sort of like any good art. Like if you go and sit in a gallery, and I used to do a lot when I was at art college, you'd sit in front of great paintings and you needed no noise. And it's the reason why galleries are quiet, why libraries are quiet. It's so that you can push away the extraneous noise, any circumstances outside of your life, and be with the piece of art that's there. And this is a good example of that. Now, I am pushing to 50 minutes on this show this week. I think I've had more time to do it, which is great. I hope I haven't bored you. I hope it excited your interest in some, unforgotten histories, and I'd really dig if you go and there's some brilliant podcasts out there and websites about forgotten history, particularly the the pre-war, because it's all lost post 39, isn't it? And all we then hear is Nazis, Russians, Allies, you know, and things like that. So it's good to do stuff between the wars, as Billy Bragg would say. Just have a look at that and see what you think. Anyway, I'll put a link in the description for the Wikipedia page that I butchered by reading through. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm sort of struggling a bit here, as you can tell, nasally. I'm sorry. Oh, that wasn't very nice. Sorry if you heard me sniffing. I'm not. Ooh. Anyway, it is what it is. It's the modern world. This will date the episode, won't it? I hope so. Anyway, hope that this crap is gone very soon. If you do catch it, be safe. Take lots of water. Drink lots of water. Lots of Panadol. Lots of rest. And may your family and friends be safe. Anyway, enjoy Empire of the Clouds. Let me know what you think. Let's hope the new Maiden album that comes out after the next one has an even longer final song on it, with even more of us delicious information for us to learn and to enjoy and to make us think. That's me for this week. I'm going to go and gargle my throat now again. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon, and keep safe, everybody. Okay, bye.